Oh yeah, I know what it is. I know why you clicked on. I saw the name. You ain't clicked on for me, you clicked on for him. And we're gonna do it real nice too. We're gonna do it real nice. We're gonna get right into it. We ain't gonna waste no time. Give it up for maybe the next president of the United States, Mr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Give it up, y'all, give it up. He's here in person. And you know, you look presidential too. I'm gonna let you know that. You look, I mean, you're in shape, you know what I'm saying? You got the face of a president, man.
Pierre, you're talking about yourself.
Well, true that, a little true. But I'm gonna put it on you right now. But no, first of all, thank you so much for taking time out to do this, man. I really mean this, man. I really appreciate that.
I'm honored to be here. I'm very grateful to you for giving me a platform.
Okay, well, we're gonna rock it out. You know, one of the things I did my research on you. I did as much as I could. I just found out about a couple of weeks ago I was gonna have you, so I said, let me do some research on you. I didn't know much about you beforehand. You seem like a really great guy, so I'm excited about talking to you. I have a major question. I want to ask this. How did you get Cheryl Hines, one of my favorite actresses of all time and a fine woman? For those who don't know, she played Larry David's wife on Curb Your Enthusiasm. How'd you do that? How'd you maneuver that move?
I think she had two kind of mental lapses in her life.
What a little drinky maybe at the time she met you? Yeah.
At the time she was drinking. She had just got divorced, and I actually met her. You know, was very close friends with Larry David, and I lived with him for a lot of the year for 2 years. We spent the summers with each other in a house in Martha's Vineyard.
Okay.
And then we traveled together, so we were very close. And at that time, he was making Seinfeld.
Okay.
And then at the end of Seinfeld, he did a pilot, which turned out to be Curb Your Enthusiasm, but they didn't intend to make a show. They were just going to make a one-hour pilot. And it was supposed to be the story of his return to comedy, to stand-up comedy after Seinfeld. And they recruited, Cheryl at that time was working for an improv group called the Groundlings in LA. It's like Second City. And they discovered her there. They wanted an unknown actress to play his wife because they wanted it to be plausible.
Right.
And she got recruited, and then after the first year, he brought her to a ski event that I was doing for my environmental group, Waterkeeper, up in Canada.
Okay.
And we spent time together, but she was married and I was married, and so there was no real chemistry. 6 years later, we were both in the middle of the divorce, and she came back, and that's when it all happened.
Right.
But I knew, Larry has, like in Seinfeld and Curb, he has all these rules,
right.
that are unwritten, but everybody's supposed to be expected to know them. And so I knew that he would be angry at me if I dated her without asking his permission first. So I went to...
Being a gentleman.
Yeah, I went to the Carlisle Hotel at around 10 or 11 o'clock at night. He was shooting Curb that year in New York. There was 2 years they shot it in New York. And I went and asked him, I said, there's some chemistry between me and Cheryl, and I'd like to invite, ask her to go out with me, but I wanted to run it by you first. And he surprised me because he was very excited, and he said, she's the best person I've ever met in my life. He said she's the most beloved person in Hollywood. She's the only person in this industry that doesn't have a single enemy. And he gave me his blessing. But when he talked to her about it, he said, it's never going to work. So
that's what he thought wasn't going to work?
Well, he told me it was a great thing.
Right, but he said,
he wasn't encouraging her to do it. And then they kind of replayed that event in Curb when Ted Danson asks him, can I date Cheryl?
I think I remember that episode.
Yeah. And he just says, no way.
No way.
So I know that's probably what he was thinking in his head. But
well, you got lucky. You
I got lucky.
Yeah, she's pretty. And that's one of
she had another mental lapse when she she agreed to me running for president.
Well, maybe not. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see. Speaking of that, you come from a long lineage of. For those who don't know, this is Robert F. Kennedy Sr.'s son. You've come from. Did you feel like being a Kennedy that you almost have to be in politics? It seems like so many of you guys are, and you're going for another high level of politics.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm 69 years old, and I never thought I would run for president, and I never intended to. I watched what was happening to the country in the last couple of years, and the war, and the Democratic Party getting away from a lot of its of the values that I grew up with as a Kennedy Democrat. Incidentally, for people who are young people and don't know my family, how old are you? Come on.
13. Okay, I'm 55. Come on, man.
Right,
You
you're
expose me
55.
on show.
So people your age know who the Kennedys are, but a lot of young people don't. So my uncle was John F. Kennedy. My father had 9 siblings, and John F. Kennedy was one of them. His elder brother Joe was killed in World War II. His sister was killed then too. His brother Robert was my father, and then he had another brother, Ted Kennedy, who was for 50 years in the United States Senate. My uncle was killed when I was 10 years old. He was assassinated in 1963. My father then ran for president in 1968. He won the California primary, and he was on his way, almost certainly, to the White House. And he was assassinated that night in Washington. I was with him when he died. I was 14 years old at that time, and then I had 11 siblings. There are 11 kids in my family. 2 of my siblings have passed. 2 of my brothers, but the rest of them are all doing public service in their lives.
Right. You said something that's interesting, and I believe it's true, that people are starting to separate from the parties, even like the Republican and Democratic Party. I feel like they're getting tired of what's happening. And I think, is that one of the reasons you decided to go independent, because you didn't really feel, because your family's traditionally Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, my family has been, I would say at the center of Democratic politics. In fact, my great-grandfather, all my great-grandparents came over from Ireland during the potato famine in 1848. They went to Boston. And the British had run Ireland for, at that point, 700 years, and Irish were not allowed to vote. They weren't allowed to participate in political office. They weren't allowed to be lawyers, to own land, and they couldn't vote. So when they came here, they took to politics like a starving man takes water, and they really took over politics in the major cities. And my great-grandfather, Honey Fitz was his name. Honey Fitzgerald, John Fitzgerald, was the first ghetto Irish Catholic mayor of Boston. There was one Irish Catholic before him, but he was chosen by the Brahmin bosses. But he was the first one that was an insurgent Irish Catholic mayor who was disobedient. My grandfather on the other side, great-grandfather, was Patrick Kennedy, who was a state legislature and a political boss, and they were contemporaries. Honey Fitz and him. Honey Fitz's daughter married my grandfather, Joseph Kennedy.
Okay, right.
Joseph Kennedy was involved in politics. He was the ambassador. He was FDR's, Franklin Roosevelt's finance manager. He was one of 10 millionaires in this country during the Great Depression. He made his money in banking, not liquor, which people say. That's a lie.
Oh, okay, I heard. Okay.
And yeah, I know. I know you heard it, but it's not. It doesn't make it true.
Right. Okay, that's right. Don't make it true. Okay.
And he then became. He was the mayor. He was the ambassador to England during World War II, so it was a very important post. His children went into politics. His eldest son, as I said, was killed in a kind of suicide mission in an aircraft, or even in the first remote control bomb he was piloting, and he died in that. endeavor. And then his next eldest son was John Kennedy, who became the first Irish Catholic mayor, president of our country in 1960.
Right, which was something. Okay, let's go back with more to you. As a kid, did you have any normalcy? And I'm asking this because most people are normal. Are you connected still? Growing up, how did you grow up? And did you grow up? What was normal about your upbringing?
I mean, there was a lot that was, very privileged about my upbringing.
Okay, now.
Yeah. So, but I grew up around politics. My home in Virginia and then in Cape Cod, I was raised with 29 cousins. We were all raised as one family. There were politics happening all around us. My home was really a satellite White House. My father was the Attorney General of the United States. This was at the height of the Civil Rights Movement. I'll tell you a story that I told this morning. My family was at the center of the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s, and they weren't raised with a consciousness about the injustice that was happening to blacks at that time. They were raised in Boston, and they were raised, they weren't exposed to it. And then during the campaign, Martin Luther King in October of 1960 was arrested in Fulton County by a sheriff. He was arrested for having a taillight out, but the sheriff put him in jail because he had an Alabama license. He had been the preacher at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, then he had moved here. And he had, a few weeks earlier, he hadn't changed his license, so they used that as a pretext to lock him in jail. They gave him a 6-month sentence with no appeal.
Wow.
His wife, he was very close to Richard Nixon, who was the vice president then, and was running against my uncle. And Daddy King had endorsed Richard Nixon. At that point in history, blacks in the South were all Republican. They voted Republican, and the whites all voted Democrat.
Right.
And both Nixon and my uncle were struggling to win the South, so they did not want to alienate the white vote. Coretta King called Nixon and said, "Will you help my husband?" He would not take her phone call because he was so scared of the issue. Right. And from then on, Martin Luther King and Daddy King called him a moral coward. They turned on him. She called up my uncle, she got Harry Belafonte to call my father. Harry Belafonte was close to my family at that time. He was funding the Civil Rights Movement. He was a calypso singer. People might not remember today.
Sure.
My uncle then called Coretta Scott King and to comfort her, but they did not. He was advised by his advisors not to call the sheriff and to make a big deal of it because you would lose the white vote. My father at that point, who was running his campaign, was at our home in Virginia, and he was leaving the house to go to National Airport, which was a 15-minute drive. And he told my uncle, "Don't do anything about it." But then he got in the car and he started thinking about it. And he got more and more pissed off at the bullying. He didn't like bullies. And when he got to National Airport, he went into a phone booth with a roll of quarters, and he got that sheriff on the phone, and he said, "My brother's going to be president. He's going to be elected in 2 weeks. And if anything happens to Dr. King, your life is going to be ruined." And that night, he released Dr. King. And because of that, Daddy King went on Sunday to his church and endorsed my uncle. And that's why my uncle won the presidency, because it was the thinnest margin of victory in the history of the United States, running against Nixon. So Daddy King turned on Nixon, endorsed my uncle, and the black vote went for John F. Kennedy, and that is why he won the presidency. And in his campaign, he immediately began supporting the Freedom Riders. He sent federal troops in to integrate the University of Alabama. He integrated with James Meredith, Ole Miss. He integrated the prisons, the schools, the hospitals, and really led that movement.
And that's good, what he did. Now, I'm asking you, do you feel like, what will you do for like black and brown? Because people like to say, "Hey man, we hear you. A lot of times black folks say, we'll help you get to the office. And then we feel like we're being abandoned. We've been abandoned. We've been hoodwinked. We've been bamboozled, whatever. We get you in the office and it's like, where's all the conversation? What's going to make you different than if the black folks come to you, like your uncle has looked out, your family's looked out for a lot of black people. They've helped out a lot of black people. But you personally, what
let me
could you
tell
do?
you, people should be skeptical about any
Sure.
political leader who says they're going to help. But I would say that for me, people should judge me on my own record. And I never intended to run for politics. I didn't do anything for political gain. But my whole life has been devoted to the civil rights movement. So my father, in 1966, 2 years before he was killed, he took a tour of Bedford-Stuyvesant, which is the poorest community in New York. It's a Brooklyn community, but that has all of the indicia of poverty, of crime, of addiction, all these indicia of poverty. But there was something different about Bed-Stuy than Compton, than Harlem, than Watts, than the South Bronx, which was there was a high degree of home ownership by black people in that community. In most of those other communities, the houses are owned by absentee landlords who rent it. But in Bed-Stuy, my father noticed that the houses were painted, the shutters were painted, there were flowers on the stoops. People cared about their schools, they cared about the police, they cared about transportation. And there was a community spirit because people owned their own homes. And my father decided to dedicate himself to bringing economic development to that community. And he started something called Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration. He understood that the problems in that community were, one, from the educational system that was failing the kids, two, that there was no access to capital, and that because there was home ownership, people could actually borrow on their homes. And if they wanted to start a business, they could, but there was no accrued financial knowledge in the community. And so what he did is he began he got great people like Tom Johnson, who was the CEO of IBM, Andre Meyer, who was the CEO of Lazard Frere, and other big Wall Street people to come and commit one day a month to Bed-Stuy, to come there and teach local black businessmen how to do basic things like accounting, inventory, all of these things that they didn't have access to. And then, when he was killed 2 years later, I went on the board of Bed-Stuy, and I stayed on that board for 35 years. And we made Bed-Stuy a model for 2,400 community development corporations across the country. You go to Bed-Stuy today, when we first started there, all of the stores were boarded up on Fulton Street. Today it's a booming community, and the economy is a booming community. And I've spent a lot of my life focused on how do you do economic development in black communities? How do you get equity into those communities? How do you get capital into those communities? How do you get financial knowledge into those communities? My main job has been an environmental lawyer. I was the leading environmental lawyer in the country. I started the biggest water protection group in the country. My first case as an environmental lawyer was representing the NAACP in a lawsuit against the town of Austin that was trying to put a garbage processing facility, a transfer facility, in the oldest black neighborhood in the Hudson Valley. And I litigated against them, and I came to know during that litigation that this was standard operating procedure, that 4 out of every 5 toxic waste dumps in America is in a black neighborhood. The highest concentration of toxic waste dumps in America is the south side of Chicago.
Wow.
The most contaminated zip code in California is East LA. The largest toxic waste dump in all of North America is Emile, Alabama, which is 85% black. And if you go through, the 44% of black children are now in urban areas, have dangerous levels of lead in their blood. They're the most high, they're exposed to more toxic contaminants, they're given the worst pharmaceutical drugs, they're given the worst medical treatments. And they have the highest chronic disease rates of any people in the world.
Right,
And they had the
Wow.
highest death rate. American blacks had the highest death rate from COVID of any population on earth. 3,000 per million population. Haitian blacks, we were told Haiti and Africa are going to get killed by COVID because they're too poor to afford the vaccine. Haiti had a 1.3% vaccination rate, but it only had 14 deaths per million population. That's 1/200th of what we had.
Wow, yeah.
Nigeria had a 1.3% vaccination rate. Same thing, 14 deaths per million population.
What do you think the reasons for that?
Well, the reasons are a bunch of reasons. One, really bad management of COVID. Two, black Americans have the highest chronic disease rate. They're the highest rate of diabetes, the highest rate of hypertension, the highest rate of cardiac arrest, the highest rate of cancer of anybody in America. They're they're given the worst pharmaceutical drugs. They're given the worst vaccines. They're given the vaccines with the mercury in them. The flu vaccines are going to go to black neighborhoods, black clinics. Beginning around 2008, Wall Street began consolidating the hospital industry, and they closed all the community hospitals in black neighborhoods. And because of that, the hospitals that blacks now go to in this country are corporate owned by Wall Street. And what they found out during the COVID is that they could keep family members away from their elderly parents who were dying in that hospital. The hospitals were getting paid huge amounts of money if somebody died from COVID, much higher than if you survived. So there was a death bonus from COVID. There was a bonus for giving people really dangerous treatments like intubation, which was sure to kill you, and remdesivir, which was sure to kill you. And what they found out is they could get away with it because family members could not go in there and complain about treatment of their parents. So you saw this huge death spike among African Americans, and nobody's asking about it. Why is nobody in the government saying, why did we have 200 times the death rate of the poorest country in the hemisphere? Why did we have 200 times the death rate in black Americans that blacks in Nigeria had?
Well, because someone's making money. That's why, a lot of money.
Yeah,
that's
people are making money.
And so my question is that you coming in there, you can make changes. It's hard to get people who are making money to stop making money. You think you just can walk in there and say,
I know how to do
all
it.
this?
I mean, my whole career, I've spent suing these agencies. I've sued EPA probably more than any attorney in the country, hundreds of times. I've sued CDC. I've sued NIH. I've sued FDA. I'm right now involved in litigation against the Department of Transport, U.S. DOT, because I'm representing 1,000 families in East Palestine, Ohio, whose lives were upended by the Norfolk Southern spill, which happened because of corrupt regulation. I've sued the Federal Communications Commission successfully. I argued a case in the Court of Appeals last year because they're for lying to the public about the dangers of cell phone radiation. All of these agencies are, this is where this corrupt merger of state and corporate power that has destroyed the middle class in this country, that has put us into a warfare state, a surveillance state at home, an imperial state abroad. The manipulation of the Fed, which has destroyed equity in black communities. The black communities lost virtually all of their equity during COVID.
Wow.
COVID closed 3.3 million businesses with no due process, no just compensation, no scientific citations, no public hearings or anything like that. They just ordered them all shut. 41% of the black-owned businesses that shut during COVID will never reopen.
Wow.
So, and a lot of these businesses had generations of equity in them. Even something like a barber shop, like a restaurant. I was in Harvard Lee, which is the poorest community in Cleveland, several weeks ago, and there was a booming, black mercantile area in the principal road. Every one of those is now plywood. Every one of those stores. Yeah. There are two businesses left in that community, and one of them is a sausage company that's been operating for 75 years. Yeah. They're closing down because all the bad black banks are now closed, and black communities have no access to capital. And that's what we need to do.
Okay.
We need to get capital back into the black communities.
Okay, switching the pace a little bit, I'm hearing that you're polling very well with people under 40.
I'm polling well with people of color. Hispanic voters is a three-way race with me and I think Biden's 34, I'm 32, Trump is 31. I beat Trump and Biden with everybody in this country under 45, and I beat them with independents.
And why do you think that is? Why do
I
you
think
young
I'm the
people
only one
gravitate to-
talking about the economy. I'm the only one talking about the housing crisis.
okay.
I'm the only, and I also, when there's so much slander about me, right, that I'm anti-vax, that I'm a conspiracy theory, all these things that are not true. Right. And if you just watch MSNBC and CNN and you just read the New York Times, you're going to believe that. But young people, people of color, independent voters are getting their news now from podcasters, from long-form interviews, and they let me on, and they let me talk. And when, people, when they see, that I'm a common sense, I want to solve people's problems. Listen, I've been, doing the same thing for 40 years, and I've never run for political office. I never wanted to be president, but I can do this job because I've sued all the agencies that are causing the corruption. And when people hear that, they convert.
Right. To the independent. Some people say that you're just going to take votes from one side, and they feel like more Democrats are going to go towards you, but not enough to win, and maybe you'll help. If Trump don't get caught, I don't know how this works with Trump. Can he still run for presidency? If he can't, then a Republican may come in next, and you're more splitting the votes opposed to getting enough votes for yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, my intention is to take votes from both of them and win the election and spoil it.
I got them. That's pretty good right there.
But
Taking from both.
What does it make any sense to you that people are saying, once again we have to choose between the lesser of two evils because it's dangerous to have an actual election in this country where people can choose a candidate that can inspire them, a candidate that can appeal to them, a candidate that's talking common sense? Or do we have to have, listen, I don't criticize either man personally. I don't go after their legal problems. But I will, I do believe that President Biden, a lot of people believe that he has some cognitive challenges.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to ignore that.
Right,
and,
sure.
I believe that President Trump has some legal challenges and some other challenges. And 80% of the American public do not want to be that to be the only choice. Right now, by the way, Pierre, right now all the polls show me taking more votes away from President Trump than President Biden. I hope, I hope to take equal from both. But the biggest polling group I have is people who are not going to vote for anybody. They're going to stay at home.
This might be a weird question because, of your age. But do you think at a certain point we should start having like a cap on how old you can be for your second presidency if you run? Like, you can't be 95, shivering and shaking up there at the end, just because people vote for you. Should it be an age because like you said, he does have cognizant problems, and God bless him, but it just doesn't look presidential and strong enough to me. I feel like we like the eye test. You know what I'm saying? One of the reasons Trump won
driving test.
Trump won a lot because his talking, his BS talking and crazy and all this rhetoric and so forth. I was wondering, there's an age you have to be to become a president. I wonder if there should be a cap on it.
Well, I would
78, because
I would not have an age cap because
78.
Thank you.
We'll do 78.
Let's do the math first.
Yeah.
78. But I would not have a cap on it because, there are people, as you probably know, there are 80-year-old people who have better cognitive capacity than some 50-year-olds. And I would say if you're going to do a test, an age test, you should do a cognitive test and not not a straight age, because I don't think that's fair to people. But I think, what I would really like to see is real democracy where, where we're not told there's only two guys you have a choice about, like the Soviet Union. We ought to be. able to have a lot of people running, and people ought to be able to vote for Cornel West if they want, or Jill Stein, or me, without feeling like,
Right. You're picking two. But that's to become an independent. First of all, no one's ever run. I've never won being independent. That's ballsy for you to do, because it would be more normal for you to run as a Democrat. I guess the Democrats have shown you so much to the point where you just can't go over there. You couldn't go over there.
The problem is, the Democratic Party is now beholden to the same corporate funders as the Republican Party. That's why both parties are the party of war. It used to be the Democrats were against war, and the Republicans were for it. But now both of them are getting their money from Raytheon and General Dynamics and Northrop Grumman and Boeing and Lockheed, and they're both the pro-war party. So, and they're both, for censorship. They're both, they're doing things that have walked away from traditional values. And the Democratic Party just made a decision that I was not going to be allowed to win, and they fixed the race in all these different ways. Somebody made a recording of 60 different rules they adopted to make sure that I could not win. For example, I'll just give you an example of one. They made a rule that said anybody who steps into the state of New Hampshire after June of last year, that any vote that they got in the Democratic Party would go to President Biden. So I had gone in New Hampshire. And so what they said is, even if you win all the votes in New Hampshire, you can't keep any of the delegates. They had a proposal that they may have adopted if I didn't leave, to do the same thing with Georgia, to say anybody who went into the state of New Hampshire could not get any vote from Georgia. So they were going to disenfranchise the entire population of Georgia. This is the Democratic Party that, with my father and uncle, fought to give voting rights to people in the state, and they were going to take all those voting rights away from them. They were going to do the same thing in Iowa. And then they did a lot of other monkey business to make sure that I couldn't win. They created this class of super electors, super delegates called PLEOs. And that PLEO stands for public leaders and elected officials, who are all beholden to the Democratic Party. And their votes would make sure that whoever won, that they would actually get to choose the candidate. So that, when it became clear to me that they were not going to allow me to run against Biden, then I left the party. But it was a good decision for me, because I think a lot of Americans are now discouraged with both political parties, and they're locked in this vitriol and anger and the tribalism.
And being independent is a fresh new look. You're not beholden to one side or the other side. You're definitely different. You've been around politics since the 50s, 60s, and 70s to now. What is the core change you think that politics has changed from when you were a little boy to now?
I think the biggest change happened in 2006 when the Supreme Court issued the Citizens United decision, because that is the decision that allowed corporations to give unlimited amounts of cash to presidential elections. We actually had, in the 1880s and 1890s, it was an era called the Gilded Age. And we lost democracy in that time. I mean, democracy really no longer exists in the United States. There was no direct election of senators. The senators were chosen by the legislatures. The legislatures were owned by the big oil companies, by Standard Oil, which was John Rockefeller, the Morgans, the Carnegies, the Fricks, and they all sat on these overlapping boards. The steel industry, they called it the Steel Trust, the Sugar Trust, the Rail Trust, and the Oil Trust, were running our country. They were choosing the presidential candidates, and what happened at that point, and democracy really disappeared. Then in the beginning of the 20th century, you had a bunch of things happen. You had the populist movement happen in the countryside, the progressive movement in the cities, which were people who wanted to return democracy. You had these muckraking journalists like Ida Tarbell, Sinclair Lewis, Upton Sinclair, who started publishing exposés on the big corporate robber barons and making the public hate them. And then you had Teddy Roosevelt come in, who was part of the aristocracy, but he was confident enough and moral enough to stand up to it. And they passed all these laws. They passed the first graduated income tax, so rich people finally had to pay their share of America's costs. They passed a 40-hour work week. They gave women the vote. They made child labor illegal. And they passed the Sherman Antitrust Act to break up all the trusts in these big corporations. The most important thing they did in 1908, was to pass a law that made it illegal for corporations to donate to federal political candidates.
Right, makes sense.
Well, the Supreme Court, 100 years later exactly, reversed that. And since that time, the tsunami of money has poured into Washington from the pharmaceutical companies, from the war, from the military contracts, from the oil industry, the coal industry, the chemical industry. And they have bought our elected officials. There's nobody left in this country, I don't think, like you or me, who believes that our voices are audible in Washington, D.C.
Sure. Not a lot of people feel that.
Everybody knows the system's rigged. They know that anything, all of the institutions of democracy are just like a Hollywood stage set. It's a kabuki theater. It's pretend.
Right.
The real decisions are being made by the robber barons again.
Right.
And the rest of us are just pawns.
You're a rebel rouser. You know that, right? You're a little rebel rouser. You're starting some shit. I love it. Well, I'm only ask you 3 more questions. One is, first of all, my demographic is 99.9% African Americans, and so I understand when you become the president, you're gonna be the president of the United States. So everybody. But what is it when I hear from my friends or people say, what will the president do? And I mean directly for us. I'm half black, half white, but black people. Like they said, there's Asian hate bills. There's LGBT. They got stuff. What is it? How does the president help us out just for black? Where does that come to help, particularly just for black? Would there ever be a black hate bill? Black people feel like they need a black hate bill because stuff happens with police and all sorts of things.
Like I said, I've spent 35 years focused on these issues of how do you bring economic development? How do you integrate Black Americans into the American dream? My father, my uncle, both my uncles were part of this battle with Dr. King.
Right.
To make our country a true constitutional democracy, representative democracy for the first time in its history. And, like I said at the beginning, people, I have a family legacy that has committed me to that issue. I have a personal legacy that does that. I'm going to need a lot of help, a lot of thoughtful people advising me to how to do this. But here's a couple things that I have learned.
Okay.
One is that, it's part of the liberal ethos to say that we have to end racism. And the way that you do that is by canceling people who have hate speech, et cetera, and by teaching kids not to be racist. To me, that's going to have a limited effect. It's aspirational. It's a good thing to do, but it's not going to solve the problem. What's going to solve the problem of racism is never going to disappear. It's innate in we're hardwired to be tribalistic. It's part of our evolution, right? To look at somebody, look at their differences and feel like you're part of a different tribe. But what you do, the remedy for that, is to give kids self-esteem so that racism doesn't bother them, so they're bulletproof against it. Okay. And how do you do that? You get self-esteem by doing esteemable things. You have to start by giving kids a good education. Our education system is a crime in this country. It's a criminal enterprise. We are letting down these kids. They come out, they can't do anything with their lives. And we need to change that. And now with affirmative action gone, particularly high education, we need to put a lot of resources into the HBCUs. And that to me is critical. But the other issue is economic vitality of those communities. And the big issues in those communities, access to capital. There's ways to get capital to those communities through the black banks. you know, because there are some black banks left, and you can flood those banks with capital. Those banks that can then make it available to the barbershop, to the guy who wants to start a yoga studio, to the preacher who wants to put an addition onto his church, and create economic activity in those communities. You know, when I was a kid, there was a lot of hatred. My uncle was the first Irish Catholic, the first Catholic president.
Yeah, that was.
There's a lot of hatred toward Catholics at that time. There was a resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan when he ran. I was called all kinds of names when I was a kid, anti-Catholic slurs. I was called mackerel snatcher, that was a big one, or Mick, or whatever, and many others. It never bothered me, because I had confidence in myself. I had an education. I knew my life was going to be okay. When somebody called me that, I didn't internalize it and say, there must be something wrong with me.
Right.
I looked at it and said, there's something wrong with that guy.
Nice.
You know, and that's what you want.
Right.
Black children to be invulnerable to racism. You can't get rid of it.
Right.
But you want to make them supermen so it bounces off them.
I like that.
And you do that by empowering them from when they're young, by giving them good education, giving them school choice, and you know, and making sure that we educate the kids.
Well, out of all the candidates, you have a lot of celebrities that like you, especially the urban ones. I mean, Beanie Siegel, I say you're good friends with Louis Gossett Jr. I'm like, damn, everybody likes this guy. I do my research. I'm like, maybe I might have to get on that bandwagon. Choo choo. One person to try to get on the bandwagon, and he got blowback. What do you feel about? I think Ice Cube took a picture with you, and he got a lot of blowback. What do you feel about his effort of trying to be doing politics the way he's going about it? What do you think
I love Ice Cube. I love that he's outspoken. Yeah. I love, you know, that he's pushing issues. That, you know, he's a good role model for kids. He's doing good things from his life. He came from a hard life. I mean, you know, Compton is
that time dangerous. It was dangerous.
And not only dangerous, but there's a million things to discourage you from doing anything with your life, and you have to be smart. You have to be committed. You have to avoid drugs, you know, which is hard. And
let's close down Congress.
You know, so I have nothing but, you know, look, at that point, anybody who spoke out in favor of me was getting hammered. You know, now it's a little bit easier, but, you know, back then everybody was getting hammered.
What I like about what you said is, do your homework on me. Before you judge and say everything negative, do some homework on me. I'm not just, to the black community, I'm not just another white guy that's running for the presidency. You know, find out what I did, my history, and who I am, and then judge me, which I can definitely appreciate. Before I let you get out of here, I want to know how hip you really are. How hip you are. I don't know how hip you are. I want to know, you've watched urban movies, right? You've seen urban movies.
Yeah.
You have, you know, okay, everything.
Are you going to give me a quiz?
Okay, no, a quiz. I was going to ask you, like, what are your top 3 favorite urban movies? I mean, African American's been in there. What did you like, man? Color Purple? I don't know what you like. I don't know what you want. What kind of?
What did you say? Color Purple? Is that what you said?
Yeah, what's wrong with that movie?
Oh, what? No, it was a good movie.
Oh, okay. Well, I gave you one, so give me 2 more that you like.
I'd say, was it Jump Street?
That's a TV show. That's a TV show.
That's a TV show.
Yeah. And that was half black, half white.
Well, I mean, there was white people.
Oh, white men can't.
There was white people in The Color Purple, too. Are we talking about?
All right, touche. You know, it wasn't enough, but okay, it was considered. A white man directed it, but okay. How about, do you know anything about comedy? I'm a comedian. You know I'm a stand-up comic?
My wife's a comedian.
Okay. Well, then tell me three comics you like. What are the 3 comedians?
I like Shawty.
Who?
From 94.
You like Shawty? Oh,
Yeah.
Man, you're really hip.
Yeah,
What
there
my
you go.
name is? Robert, what my name is? That's pretty cool. All right, well, Shorty, I was hoping you, but I mean, I don't disrespect Shorty, but you can put my name on the list next time. Pierre.
I will, Pierre.
Okay, next time somebody says, what's your favorite comedian? Say Pierre. Okay, now that's cool, man. What we do sometimes, we go on your social media and we do what's called IG creeping. That means we go on your social media page and see what you have posted. And when we put it up, we want to know what you were thinking when what was happening at this time, okay? So I got a couple of pictures. Well, it's on your social media. Here we go. All right, so my question is, what was going on through this picture right here. What was happening? This was, look where you at. That's Rocky.
Yeah, Rocky.
I think you went all the way up there, didn't you?
I did. I ran up
And
those
danced
steps.
up there?
Yep.
Look at them guns, man. You in shape for a president, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Most presidents ain't shaped like that, man. most of them need a
No,
wheelchair.
I wish they would decide this election by who could get up those stairs.
I know.
fast.
Oh, you want an easy win. I get that. I get an easy win. All right. What's the next picture? What we got there? What was happening? Oh, talking about moneymaker.
Yeah.
You can't even $8.7 million.
I beat them all last quarter.
Wow. And what is that indicative? They're saying people really feeling you more than the other person. That's what money.
Well, those are
determines?
small contributions because that's to the campaign. Those guys got more money from the billionaires in their super PAC than I did, but the campaign is maximum $6,600.
Okay.
And so it's mainly $10 donors, $20 donors. So
I get it.
On small donors, I beat them both.
Wow. Okay. That says a lot. What we got here? Live, free, or die. Death is not the worst of evils. General John Stark. I don't know if General John Stark was. Who was he?
He was a Revolutionary War hero in Vermont and New Hampshire.
What war?
The Revolution.
Oh, Revolution War. I'm sorry. I thought you said he's a revolutionary. Not
Revolutionary
from the
War.
revolution. Yeah, my bad. Okay. All right, boy, y'all something else. All right, next one. Let's see what the next picture was. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, that's me and Cheryl.
Them books right there, is that a photo op or you read some of them books?
No, those are. Did I read some of them?
Yeah.
I read. I don't know what percentage, but a lot of them.
Oh man, there it is right there.
My
Look
wife
at-
is trying to get rid of them.
I love it, man. That's a beautiful moment. I like the way that looks. Look, I give you what's called a swag bag when you leave out here. That means you get all cool products from my show. I got a T-shirt. Pull that T-shirt. I want you to pull that T-shirt up. I got a large. You wear a large or you need extra large? I see the muscles.
Large.
You wear a large?
Yeah.
Well, I got you a large shirt. All right, and it's a cool shirt too. It's my logo without my face right there.
Let me see.
So if you're ever in the hood, you need to get out the hood, put that shirt on.
Really?
Yeah. That'll help you get the red, black, and green. Yeah, that's it right there. You wear that right there. You get out of the hood. Hey, man, thank you. First of all, let me shout out to my girl, Angela Stanton, for bringing you here, getting you here. Shout out to her right there. I want to give her some love. I love that girl. She does her thing. Man, look, thank you so much for taking time out and going around doing these things because I'll be honest with you, I don't think Biden would do this or Trump would do this to come to some young black places to talk to us. At least we can feel this person. If you're going to be our man, I appreciate the fact that you took time out and talk to us, the people, the little people, and people who have more things opposed to the other two. No disrespect to the other two, but people are tired of that. We're looking for a new face, and if you could be the next president of the United States, I'd be proud to say I had you on my show first, man.
Thanks, Pierre. I will see you at the inaugural ball.
Ooh, you talking about? Give it up on that. Give it up right there. Give it up right there, man. Right. And real quick, hold on 1 second. Just say my name. Tell them who your name is. Can I call you Bobby now? We don't talk.
Yeah.
Bobby.
Sure.
I got Bobby on this show. Huh? Oh, you have social media. You want to tell your social media handle right there to all people want to?
I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and go to Kennedy24.com and press the donate button.
I like that. The last thing just say, hold on. The thing is, I'm Robert Kennedy, and I survived Pierre's panic room. That's what everybody says.
I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and I think I survived Pierre's panic room.
Thank you. If you like that show, like, subscribe, and comment below. Hit the notification bell. Hit the subscribe button, man. We want you around. Appreciate it.